Action Research Virtual Poster Presentation by Catherine Coggy. The topic of focus is managing behaviors in the classroom through student-teacher relationships. The importance of this topic is primarily based on my experience in my second teaching block. I had a lot of personalities in the classroom to manage and some very bright students who, when left without task, would get themselves into trouble with other students. The research question of focus is what happens when educators build strong, meaningful relationships with their students in the classroom. Relevant terms: behavior management includes all of the actions and conscious actions to enhance the probability people, individual, and in groups choose behaviors which are personally fulfilling, productive, and socially acceptable. Classroom management refers to the wide variety of skills and techniques that teachers use to keep students organized, orderly, focused, attentive, on task, and academically productive during a class. My action research plan. Data sources. It is important to include both qualitative and quantitative data sources in your action research. In terms of qualitative research, I have chosen to include conversations and anecdotal notes. Conversations, by having conversations daily or weekly with students, will allow me to have one-on-one time with my students, and it will give them an opportunity to give me their opinions and views of student-teacher relationships. Anecdotal notes will allow me to reflect on the behaviors of students in reaction to strategies implemented and whether I can make connections to the behaviors and the strategies implemented. This source of data collection is important to the study because students will not always realize that their behaviors and body language can give a lot of useful information that the students won't always tell or portray in conversations and in other data collection methods. When looking at quantitative data, I chose anonymous surveys and exit cards. An anonymous survey will allow students to give me their opinions that they know will not be tracked back to them. This may allow me more insight into their views of student-teacher relationships in relation to classroom management. Exit cards will be given at the end of each class or day that a new strategy was implemented. Students will have the opportunity to express their feelings towards the strategy put in place and how they believe it impacted the environment of the classroom. To ensure all students are able to participate, I will accommodate students by allowing them to circle or place a mark next to their chosen answer. Surveys and exit cards will also be available on tablets or the computer, which will allow students to be independent while doing them, as they can have computer-assisted technology read the questions and they can tap on the answer if they are unable to write. Furthermore, they can use translation on the device if they are English language learners. Triangulation, validity, and reliability. Because this action research topic does not have a clear cause and effect, it is important to implement and collect different forms of data to ensure triangulation so that the results lack bias and are true to all forms of the data collected. In order to do this, the researcher must collect data from different perspectives and include both qualitative and quantitative data. For the triangulation of data, I will focus on anecdotal records, anonymous surveys, and conversations. This will allow the researcher to collect data from the student's point of view in terms of anonymous surveys, where the students have more freedom of expression without consequence of their name being attached to their opinion. The researcher's viewpoint, by taking anecdotal records of their overseeing in the research through body language, and finally through one-on-one conversations where the students are able to express themselves without biased opinions from other students or peers. Furthermore, they can't be influenced by their peers to answer in a certain way. I can ensure reliability of data collected by spiraling similar questions that are worded in different ways throughout the study. This will allow the researcher to compare the questions answered by students and find patterns or outliers in the data. Validity can be ensured through the triangulation of data collected and comparing those results. By having anonymous data directly provided by the students, and data collected the students are not always aware of is occurring, will allow for more authentic results as the actions of the students are unbiased. Participants and setting. To ensure triangulation, validity, reliability, the participants in this research will include the students in the class of focus, the resource teacher, the principal, and the classroom teacher. The students will provide the data used in the analysis. The resource teacher will be a second set of hands and eyes for an alternative point of view of data in order to avoid the researcher's bias. And it is always a good idea to inform the principal of any projects you are conducting in the classroom or school to have their approval and to discuss and share results with. This information will all be collected in the classroom with all the students participating unless otherwise stated, such as if they have not brought in a permission form. Data will be collected during regular scheduled school hours unless the students are with another teacher for a class. Ethical considerations. First and foremost, the principal will be sent a letter to read over that the researcher plans to send home to the parents and guardians of the student to ask for permission to participate. Only after the principal gives the okay will the letter be sent home. Students who return the completed form with permission for participation will be included in the experiment. The researcher will maintain confidentiality by assigning a number to students in replacement of their names when referring to conversations or anecdotal records taken. This survey is already anonymous, allowing for privacy, and the exit cards will also be a way of reflection for students in an anonymous, confidential manner. Furthermore, during analysis and any writing done about the students following the collection of data, the students can either be referred to by the number given or by a pseudonym. Timeline chart, data collection process. The anecdotal notes or classroom observations will be collected weekly before, during, and after new strategies are implemented from September to June. Anonymous surveys, exit cards, and conversations will be at the beginning of the research period, at the end of the research period, and after each research strategy is implemented from September to June. Data analysis. With the data collected from the study, I will place a value or rating scale to each form of data. The surveys distributed will be numbered that is associated with a student for tracking progression. The students will answer questions on a rating scale of 1 to 10. With the anecdotal notes, there will also be a scale of 1 to 10 that directly relates to both the surveys and the conversations. Actions and interactions of students will be rated during the collection of the anecdotal notes according to a predetermined chart. The conversations will finally also be associated to a rating scale. This will allow the researcher to track how the actions and behaviors relate to the responses of the students and their perceptions of relationships with the teacher. The data will be used to determine a mean, median, mode, and range from the initial beginning, midpoint, and the end of the study, and will be grouped by the number assigned to each student at the beginning of the study. This way, the researcher can compare the progression of the student's perceptions of the relationships and the actions and behaviors that the student demonstrates in relation to classroom management. There were 3 pieces of literature that I used to support my study. The first article was by Arthur Kelly, Ford, and Lyons, titled Classroom Management: Creating Positive Learning Environments. This article touched on 5 theories that enlightened me on the possibilities I'd never considered before concerning the student behavior in the classroom. The article offered cause and effect, such as through the choice theory, which states that student behaviors are their attempts to satisfy needs, whereas I would assume the student was simply disobeying instructions. Moreover, within the goal-centered theory, which requires teachers to seek out need-based explanations for why their students are motivated to misbehave, and then to negotiate alternative ways for these needs to be met. This allows educators to get to the root of the problem and then to address it accordingly. These perspectives now encourage me to delve into the root of the behavior and then to address and solve it. Literature article number 2 is by Marzano, and Pickering. It is titled Classroom Management That Works: Research-Based Strategies for Every Teacher. The first chapter of this novel suggests the teacher is the most important factor affecting student learning. Marzano, and Pickering discuss the relationships between the 4 major dimensions, including with-itness, smoothness, and momentum during lesson presentations, letting students know what behavior is expected of them at any given point, and variety and challenge in the seat work assigned to students and student learning, as they cite the work of Jacob Kunin. This framework allows for educators to understand how effective classroom management of behavior is essential to learning. This will help me to reflect on my practices more so to ensure I am performing in accordance with student needs. The third and final article I looked at was also by Marzano and Marzano. It is titled The Key to Classroom Management: Building Classroom Relationships. According to Marzano and Marzano, the key to classroom management is based on the quality of student-teacher relationships and heavily relies on the educator upholding a fitting level of dominance while upholding suitable levels of cooperation and being sensitive to students' needs. Moreover, from Marzano and Marzano's article, they cited a study of 700 students collected by Wubbles, Breckelmans, and Twardzic and Admiral in 1999. They found that students tend to be more successful and actually requested a teacher with strong guidance and control rather than one who lacks. This demonstrates that students not only need discipline and guidance in order to succeed in an educator, they also desire it. Structure allows students to have an understanding of what is expected of them at all times and to perform accordingly. This study will help to remind me that my students require the educator's dominance and cooperation in the classroom, such that students know what is expected of them at all times to allow for a productive classroom learning environment. In closure, classroom management is the foundation for a productive and efficient learning environment. It is important that students not only feel comfortable with their teacher, but also that there is a level of respect and cooperative understanding by both parties. By having a better understanding on how student-teacher relationships impact behaviors in the classroom and what strategies work well versus those that do not, this will allow me to make effective decisions regarding the implementation of strategies to put in place to conduct a productive, cooperative learning environment where students are engaged and understand what is expected of them at all times. This will allow for the most effective and engrossing classroom learning environment.